Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary. Now, for today's episode, I'm really excited because we are speaking to the founder of Master Talk, Brendon Kumarasamy, who runs a popular YouTube channel called Master Talk. Go check it out. It's awesome. There's a lot of really good value on there. And he coaches CEOs of major businesses to help them with their public speaking and communication. Well, thank you so much, Brendon, for being here. I'm really excited. You want to start by telling us how you got involved in communication?
Yeah, absolutely, Esti. When I was in university, I used to do these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were, playing sports or playing football or doing all these things. I clearly wasn't meant for any of that stuff, but I did do presentations competitively. So after 3 years of presenting, I probably presented hundreds of times, helped dozens of university students master communication. When I joined corporate America, I guess corporate Canada in my case, I got to just ask myself, what do I do with my life now? I got all this stuff and then, I got this money and all that, but what do I do for an impact? That's when I realized that the public speaking information and communication is everything, whether it's relationships, the people that you speak to, presentations. I just noticed a lot of that information is terrible. So I started making videos in my basement. One thing led to another, and here we are today.
Oh, so you focus more on the public speaking, on the communication, both. How does it work?
Yes. So my definition of public speaking is that it's everything. In the same way that public speaking is talking to your partner, to having a conversation with somebody that you love, to presenting a subject that you really care about. It's all about sharing an idea. So I actually cover all of those aspects of conversation on Master Talk.
How does communication skills play into public speaking? Obviously, you have to be able to articulate yourself well, but past that, how does that play into public speaking?
Right, absolutely. So for me, communication and public speaking is very similar. And I think the biggest issue that stems from anything really related to that is the fear that it comes associated with it. Whether it's the fear of having a hard conversation with the people that we like speaking to, or simply getting up there and giving a presentation at work or talking about something that we care about. It's that fear that stops us from going from point A to B. And the way that we fix that, ST, is by first realizing where the fear comes from. Most of the presentations we give in our lives are entirely forced. They're not optional. We don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, ST, you want to get breakfast and present all day? Not a thing, right? It just doesn't happen. Most of the times when you present, it's either at school where it's tied to a grade, or it's at work where it's tied to a result. We don't have time to enjoy public speaking. So when we go to the harder conversation in our life later, we're too scared to even voice it or start a conversation.
That's really interesting. So you're saying we should practice public speaking for fun or as a hobby to improve communication in all areas of our life, especially those hard conversations that we're so afraid to have.
Absolutely. There's an easy exercise you could do today, actually. It's called the random word exercise that I'm happy to demonstrate. So, ST, why don't you just give me a random word?
Marriage.
Gotcha. Kind of saw that one coming. All right. So now what I need to do is I need to make a presentation out of thin air. So here I go. What really lasts at the end of the day? Is it the dog that you played with as a kid? Is it the souvenirs that you cherish? Is it the way that you live your life? I've always believed that there are very little things in life that last. And one of those things is marriage. Marriage is a difficult thing. Marriage is not the easiest thing in the world, but if you can master it and make it last, like all of the other amazing souvenirs in your life, it could be the greatest memory out of all of them. So create long-lasting experiences, not just with everything you do, but everything that you are, with your partner, with the people that you raise, and for the person that you end up becoming. So anyway, this is just an example of just saying something random.
Yeah, it reminds me of Diamond is Forever.
Sure, well, let's go with that. But the point that I'm driving is that every day, if you pick 5 random words, light, tree, door, and you make 5 random presentations, or 5 minutes, 1 minute each, what happens is you get more comfortable presenting things you don't know anything in. So when it comes to things you want to talk about, things you want to speak about, it becomes a lot more easier for you to speak about those subjects because you just know more in them.
What if someone has this real fear of communicating deep conversations with their partner, right? Okay, so this exercise is great for public speaking or for maybe even for meeting people in general, strangers, I think this is great. But when it comes to those hard conversations, how can someone overcome that fear?
Right. So in my opinion, there's a couple of things. I think the first thing that's easy is to start asking questions that are simple but have never been asked before. So I think one thing, and John Gottman, who's a relationship expert that I very much respect, talks a lot about this idea that we don't ask each other open-ended questions anymore. Most statements between partners are usually, do the dishes, or do this, or do that. But rather, where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you value right now? What's your favorite food? What do you like to do? Right? Things like that, or because those things change over time. And I think if we start to ask these easier questions when the conversations get a bit more harder or a bit more challenging, it's easier for us to transition from A to B. The second part of that I wanted to speak on is this idea of understand the consequence of not doing it. Especially from a perspective of an entrepreneur, and from another guy named Patrick McDavid that I also have a lot of respect for. He talks a lot about this idea that if you don't have the long conversation or the hard one, you'll end up resenting them anyways in the long term. So you have to start cutting those roots right away so that you have a long sustaining relationship, whether it's a business relationship or a romantic one, to be honest.
Yes. So how can one create that safe space that whatever they say is going to be okay and they're not going to just be attacked by their partner for saying the truth or the hard thing or whatever got in their way?
There's a couple of ways to do this. There's one I can point out that Tom Bilyeu does with his wife, and they have probably one of the best relationships I've seen, is they use a strategy called the coin. So the coin is basically they each pick an object that they both like and appreciate about each other, and it's like a life card. So whenever they use the card, it means that the other person has to create a safe space for them. Because the issue is, like, when you try and tell hard things to somebody else and they take it differently, they think it's like an emotional attack, that they start attacking you and then creates this like nuclear war. But instead, if you have like, I don't know, like a coin, and you say like, hey, I'm using the coin now, the other person knows there's like an object in the room that goes, oh, okay, this is a safe space. I'm not supposed to argue. I'm just supposed to listen. Let's use ourselves as an example. Let's say I want to tell you something hard. I tell you about this coin. So we both have a coin, right?
Okay.
It could be any coin. And I said, whenever I use the coin, it means that I just want to be heard. So that way it's a visual object.
Okay.
Right. Let me tell you why this is effective, why Tom likes this a lot. So let's say you're trying to tell me something, but I got 10 things spinning right now, like business, podcasts, all that stuff. And you come up to me and you say, hey, we need to talk. For me, we need to talk doesn't mean like this is important. This means, oh, we need to talk like we always do. So I don't actually recognize the difference. I kind of just say, okay, well, can we talk later? But if there's a coin or some sort of object that just says, hey, can I use this right now? Because we talked about it before there was an emotional trigger, I know what the object means.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So really it could be anything. Tom just happens
really
to use a
anything.
coin, but it could be anything.
Yeah, Tom uses a coin, but you can just use anything.
Would you pick up the coin, or would you say that, like, I use the coin now? How does he go about it?
It's up to you, but how he does it is he kind of just says, oh, I just like to use the coin now. And the other person just knows immediately, oh, okay, this is important. There's another thing that Tom does that's really good, is that they're very clear on language. So what does important even mean? So for them and their specific relationship, important means that this is like super urgent. It's like do or die. So nobody in their relationship, they never use important unless it's unless it's like essential, or else they just say, hey, you can do this. It's something you need to work on, but they never say it's important. So that's another good thing. But the coin's much easier to digest, to be honest.
Yeah, it's two separate things. I think it's a great thing that coin is like, okay, so your partner knows you have to focus and concentrate on what's going on and stop everything else. The important part is the fact of communicating what words mean, because most of the time our biggest fights are just misunderstanding exactly what is going on. I mean this and you mean this, and we're using the same word to describe it. So we're just not understanding each other. If we could stop for a second and clarify exactly what the definition of the word means, then the fight just ends, because you realize that you're talking about two different things, or you just totally agree with each other in different vocabulary. So that's really good. Identifying what is important, whatever other words you need.
Completely agree with you.
Yeah. Now, how has communication changed your own life?
Honestly, it's everything. Whether it's the speaking engagements I give now, the people I speak to, the people I coach, but also just in my personal life. For example, this year, happy to be transparent here, for my mother and sister, my birthday present for them wasn't an object. I wrote them handwritten letters. So communication also helps you express different emotions in a way that makes other people feel differently. So when they got that letter, I didn't spend money on this. It was just time I spent to write it. It really means a lot to them, which didn't really make sense to me because I'm a guy. But to the opposite gender, it's like, oh, wow, like this person took a lot of time. So I think public speaking helps you not just in your presentations, but also your personal life, the people that you talk to, the way that you appreciate other people. Because I know it's really hard to show appreciation for others, something really difficult. Even if we do appreciate them, we never vocalize it, so the other person never knows. So they think you always hate them, that you're always doing a bad job, and this once again escalates. So it's all about those little things, but I would say in general, everything for sure.
Going back to the opposite gender and the handwritten cards, do you think that because of communication or your expertise in communication, it affected your love language?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give an example. So this is an exercise. Obviously, I'm no expert on the subject, but I'm happy to talk about what I do. So one thing one of my friends does with his girlfriend is that they rank the 5 love languages I'm sure you've talked about. So I'll just repeat them so everyone knows: words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and
Touch.
touch. Thank you. So what they do is they don't just say their main love language. They rank them in order and explain each of the 5 to each other. So I'll give an example why this makes sense in the relationship of this communication. So let's say for me, quality time is 3, rank 3rd, and for you it's 1. Okay, I'll just use ourselves as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ask me, why is it a 3? Going back to communication. Like instead, this is a good example framework for people. Curiosity over statements. Don't just say, well, why is it a 3? That doesn't make any sense. Don't instead you say, why did you put it a 3? Open-ended questions versus closed ones, right? Okay, so let's say you ask me the question. I would say something like, oh, well, and Tom Billiard talks about this a lot. Let's say I'm working 16 hours a day because I'm just a maniac. I love working hard. And I spend 5 minutes with my partner and we're both smiling and we're both, good time. I feel extremely connected to that other person. But if you ask the opposite partner, because quality time is 1, they might say, oh, no, for me, 5 minutes isn't enough. Like, I need an hour with you. So the way that he compromised in that situation, he's kind of said, well, I still need to work all day. So I can't just spend like an hour. But how about I give you breakfast every Saturday? So like undivided attention. Every breakfast, at least once a week, undivided. He's a really hard worker. So every relationship's going to be different. But that makes sense. It worked. Instead of them both going, oh, you're 3, I'm 1. Okay, why do you value and I don't? We're not seeking to understand what those numbers mean. And that's where those questions come to help us.
Right. So it goes back to most people don't just have one dominant one. A lot of people have 2. And a healthy person really can give and receive love in all 5 love languages. So hopefully if you're healthy enough and you could go and figure these things out, you say, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of 2, a little bit of 1. This is more where I could do 3. Let's work things out. And like you said, you're communicating about it and you're making sure both of your emotional love tanks are filled. But your own love language, your dominant one, okay, I'm sure that you've ranked them if you had your friend who did it. Do you think that words of affirmation is higher on your list because of communication?
That's a good question. So for me personally, words of affirmation is actually really low on my list. So I'm happy to share mine. So mine's acts of service in order: acts of service, physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, and gifts. So gifts is at the bottom, right? So the reason words of affirmation is really low for me is because as a YouTuber, I get complimented a lot, right? They kind of just say, oh, Brendon, like I love your videos, all that stuff. So because of that, I don't really feel that it means anything because I always get complimented all the time. Not to say that I'm great or anything, it's just the nature of the career I have. So for me, which is kind of ironic, even if I'm the communication coach, I feel a lot more loved when somebody takes an action. So let's say, for example, this seems completely crazy. My mom cuts an avocado for me every day. It takes her, 30 seconds? But it means so much to me than versus if she bought me a Rolex. Like, I really care if she bought me a Rolex. Like, it just don't. Like, look at me. I don't care about she cuts an avocado. It saves me 30 seconds. I so appreciate that. So everyone's got their own thing. But you're right in the sense that words of affirmation is actually really low for me. So I don't value it much.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's no right and there's no wrong here. I'm curious to know if, let's say, someone on your YouTube comments, not just, oh, you're awesome, or I love this video, but a real in-detailed comment. Does that have a bigger effect on you, or also you don't really care?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think what's interesting, that's why I like ranking the 5. It's just relative to the other one. So even if there's a detailed comment, which I would definitely appreciate a lot more than just a, hey, good job, this is great. The quality time, it's great to spend an hour with the people that I love too. So I just value that more than the words. But the words mean, they always mean something. Like you said, receive and give and all 5.
Exactly. Okay, what was your greatest challenge having this title of Master of Communication?
Yeah, it's hard to stay humble. I think that's the issue that I've seen. Like, and I try my best to be. And I'm not saying I'm not an expert in what I do. I think what I'm saying instead is you can have these two worlds as an influencer. Either people, like a double-edged sword. Some people go, "We hate you. You suck. You're terrible." Even if I just make YouTube videos of Lucy. And the other side is like, it's like a God complex. Like, you changed my life. Without you, I'm nothing. Like, it's crazy. So you're kind of living in this like this weird in between, and you have to marry the two. You kind of have to say, I shouldn't take this criticism too much to heart because they probably didn't spend that much time, and I really shouldn't think I'm a god, or because if I let this get to my head, I'll start to put my entire identity in this YouTube channel. So if I start losing followers, I'll start losing parts of my own being. So the challenge is marrying the two.
Yeah, that's hard. Now, what is the best communication advice you could give to someone who's in a great relationship but wants to make it even better?
Yeah, I got this one from Matthew Hussey that I would love to share with people. So I was listening to one of his podcasts, and he said the following that really worked, and it works well with communication. He said, make a list of all of the qualities you look for in someone. Do you want someone generous? Do you want someone loving? Do you want someone who's always there, who makes time for you, cares? And then step 2, once you have that list all detailed out, become that person. And I thought that was really powerful. Like, it really made me think. I was like, wow. If I expect something from somebody else, I should probably have that myself. And I think by doing that, it makes communication so much more easier. Because if you don't like to be communicated in a certain way, chances are you probably don't want to communicate to that partner in that very same way that you don't want to be communicated to. So I think that kind of embodies everything that we're talking about here.
Totally. It's so hard, but it's so true. And we really need to do that in every aspect of life. Now, what's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote of all time is be insane or be the same. And if you're someone who's still listening to this show, my assumption is that you don't want to be like everyone else, because most of us have disastrous relationships. If you want to do something different, if you want to be different, you want the results that people don't have, whether it's in your marriage, your relationship, your business, or your life, you need to be willing to make decisions that only make sense to me. So if you think about someone like me, I have all this success, but I'm also talking to you on my mattress right now. I still live in my mother's basement. I don't plan on moving out for a long time. And these decisions don't make any sense to most of humanity. But if you start making decisions that only make sense to you, then not only will you be better positioned to be happy, but also find a partner that suits your lifestyle and what you want out of life.
Totally. I love that. I think it's going to become one of my favorite quotes too. Well, awesome, Brendon. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed speaking to you.
Likewise, Esty.
Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.